Hi everyone, it's Lynn Dion here from Pink Whisper Designs. Today we're going to make this really fun flip-flop card, and we're going to be creating a birthday theme. We're going to use this really fun and funky birthday cake, and this is from the Art Impressions collection. And to do our coloring today, we're going to use the Tombow dual tip markers, and to create this fun spattered background, we're going to be using our Distress Oxide sprays. So let's go ahead and get started. So for stamps today, we're going to be using this birthday cake from the birthday cake set from Art Impressions, but you can see you get all these other cute little images in here. You get a cupcake and a candle as well. And for paper, I'm using the Strathmore Bristol Smooth 100-pound cardstock. And for ink, we're using the Versafine Onyx black ink. This is a permanent black ink. We're going to be using some watercolor markers, so this won't bleed or smear when we use those markers. And I'll press this out with my STAMPendable stamp press here. And that paper I placed in my mini MISTI stamp positioner. So I am using my Zig blender pen, but for markers today, I'm going to be using my Tombow dual tip markers. Again, this is a water-based marker. And I'm starting off with 451 and 452, so two different shades of blue here. And I showed you that color palette as we got started here. So it's a combination of blues, yellows, and kind of that corally color. So it's going to be a really pretty palette. And then we'll add some gray for some shadowing as well. So again, I'm using the Zig blender pen to do my blending. There is a Tombow blender pen available that you could certainly use. I'm familiar with my Zig blender pen. It's a little bit wetter, I find, and I find my blending is easier to do, and I like the tip on it. It's very detailed, so I can get into some of these really tiny areas. But again, you could certainly use your Tombow blender pen here as well. So what I'm going to do is just add some of that light color first, and then I'll come in with that darker blue and we'll add some shadows here and there. So I am using the Strathmore Bristol Smooth paper, and that is my favorite paper to use when I'm using any kind of water-based markers. I just find that it kind of keeps that ink up on top of the paper a little bit better and allows me to do some easy blending. So now I've got 062 and 055, so a lighter yellow and a darker yellow there. And I'll start adding that color to the flames on the candles. I'm adding a little bit of that darker yellow, but I realized here that it wasn't quite dark enough, so I'm bringing in 905, which is an orangey tone, to add a little bit more shadow here on the bottom of these flames. So the color palette today we're using is going to be the blue, kind of a corally color, and that little touch of yellow. So I'm going to stick to those colors. And here I'm coming in with some yellow on those little hearts. And now I've got 873 and 905, which are two kind of a peachy tone and an orangey tone. And that'll give us kind of that corally effect when these two colors are combined. So I'm starting off with that lighter color, and I'll be adding this to some of the frosting on the cake, and then some of those little bubbles and stars on the cake as well. Now for the background, we'll be doing some spattering and some ink blending as well. So that's going to tie all of this together. So again, I start with that lighter color, add a little bit of that darker color, and then blend these out. And I'm trying to keep one side of these little circles a little bit darker. And I'll do the same thing here with all of the other pieces here. Now with N95, which is a really light gray color, I'm just going to add some shadows here and there, keeping that part of the frosting mostly white. And then I thought it needed a little bit more yellow, so I'm going back to those same two yellows again, and I'll add a little bit of a yellow trim around this platter. And then for a little bit more interest on that yellow section, we'll be adding a little bit of stitching. So let's go ahead and do the candles first. Again, those same two peachy orangey tones that we were using before. I'll kind of keep the color, the darker shadowing off to the side of the candles, or kind of where they butt up against one another. So now I've got my Jelly Roll gel pen. This is the collection of grays, and this is the Moonlight collection. And what I wanted to do was add some dark gray stripes to my candles. So I'm going in and adding that there. And then I'm going to kind of darken up some of those little circles on the cake as well. And here's where I'm adding a few little stitches down the side of my cake and along that platter, as I mentioned before, just to personalize it a little bit and make it a little bit more interesting. And then I did decide to come in and add a few little polka dots to each of those stars. So have some fun with this. You can do whatever you want. You could also layer this up. Cut it a few different times and layer up sections of the cake to give it a little bit more dimension. Now let's go to the white Jelly Roll gel pen and we'll just add some highlights here and there. And it really makes these candles pop out a little bit more here, just by adding that little bit of highlighting. So that's some really quick and easy coloring for this one. There's not a lot of coloring, just this one little cake. It does have the coordinating die, so I'm going to go ahead and grab that. I'll line that up, and then I'll just tape that in place with a little bit of temporary tape here. I'm using the purple tape. And this will fit in my Sizzix Sidekick machine, so I'm going to go ahead and run that through. So let's grab the Wink of Stella glitter pen, and we'll add a little bit of clear glitter to the tops of those candles. And then you can add it to anywhere else on this cake you like. I'm going to add it to the frosting there just to give it a little bit of sparkle. So once that's all set, let me show you that quickly, and then we'll set that aside to dry a little bit. So now I'm going to take the Nuvo Crystal Glaze. This is just a clear glaze, and we'll add some here and there. I'm going to add some to those little hearts just to give those a little bit more dimension. And now let's grab the Art Impressions Rectangle A2 double stitch dies. And I've got that second largest one, and I die cut 2 panels. Now I'm using my Distress Oxide sprays, and I've got Abandoned Coral, Saltwater Taffy, and Squeezed Lemonade. And just as a reminder, all of the products I'm using today will be listed down below and also on my blog. So to spatter these panels, I'm just unscrewing the top. And this is a Squeezed Lemonade, and I'm just using that nozzle portion to do my spattering. I'm just dipping it down into the container and then spattering it. The reason I'm doing it this way is because if I were to take my Squeezed Lemonade ink pad and just press some ink onto my craft mat and then spritz it with water, it gets a little bit diluted. It's not quite as vivid as this. It's not quite as intense of a tone as this. So that's why I'm doing it this way. So now I'm going to that Saltwater Taffy. Again, I've just unscrewed the top, and I'm just taking that directly, spattering it directly onto the paper. So I'm not adding any water here or anything. Now, I did decide here to heat set. I didn't want these colors to start bleeding together too much. So I did a quick heat set, and then I'm going to go ahead and add that Abandoned Coral now. And that will give us, again, kind of a little bit more of an intense spattering. So I did that for both of those panels. And then I'll come in and heat set that one last time. And you can see how pretty these are and how bright these colors are now. So let's go ahead and take the Abandoned Coral ink pad. This is the Distress Oxide ink pad. I'm using my Hero Arts blending brush, and I'm going to go all the way around the edges of the panel. Now I did notice there that that spatter wasn't quite dry, so it did press that ink around a little bit. I'm not going to worry about that. I'll just quickly heat set that and make sure that everything is completely dry. And now I can go ahead and finish that inking all the way around the edges, and I'll do that for both of these panels. And that'll just kind of bring your eye in towards the center. So we're going to leave the centers mostly white. So I did that for both panels. So let's go ahead and create our card base. I've got some Strathmore Bristol Smooth cardstock that measures 4 1/4 by 11 inches. And my first score will be at 5 1/2 inches. Now I need to make a second score here, and that'll be at 2 3/4 inch. So I flipped that panel over, and I'm not going to go all the way down. I'm just going to make a little mark there. You could certainly do this with a pencil as well. And then I'll flip it over again and make another mark at the 2 3/4 inch mark. And you'll see we have one mark at the top and one at the bottom. And again, you could certainly make that with a pencil if you prefer. But right now I'm going to take my T-square ruler, and I'm just checking to make sure that that will line up properly. So let's go ahead and fold the card at the 5 1/2 inch mark. And we're not going to fold it yet at the 2 3/4 inch mark. First, we need to do some cutting. So I'm going to open up the card, and on the inside front panel of my card, I'm going to place the die, and I want to place it at that 2 3/4 inch mark. And I want to place it right at the center point of the die. So I'm looking at the die, lining it up with that 2 3/4 inch line. And here I'm going to mark it with a pencil so that you can see where that marking is. Now that I have that, I'm going to run it through the die cutting machine, and I only want to cut the right hand side halfway of this cake. So 1/2 of the cake only on that right hand side. So I'm lining up my top plate right along that score mark or those pencil lines, and I'm running it through the die cutting machine. And again, that will just cut from the center towards the right. And you can see that there. So now I can go ahead and finish off those score lines. So now I want to go back to the 2 3/4 inch mark and score right up to that cut line. And I'll do that on the top and on the bottom. So once I have that done, this card will fold. It's kind of like a fan fold. I'm just erasing those pencil marks first. And now we can go ahead and fold it back on itself. And we already folded the card in half, so now we have that kind of Z fold here. So we've got the base of the card all set. So let's go ahead and stamp a sentiment. So I want it to be on the center of this panel, and I want it to be behind the birthday cake. So when the card is closed, you won't see the sentiment. So I'm going to place this in my MISTI stamp positioner. And again, that panel will sit centered on the back part of the card, on the inside back section of the card. And now let's grab a sentiment, and that's from the Big Birthday Wishes stamp set from Art Impressions. And it does say Big Birthday Wishes, and it's a nice bold sentiment. So what I'm doing is placing it right behind that birthday cake, exactly where I want it to be. I'm just centering it. And then I'm closing the card. I'm just holding it and closing the card And then I'll just make sure that it's nice and straight here, but now I know it will be right behind that cake. So let's go ahead and quickly stamp that. I'm going back to that Versafine Onyx black ink. I'm just rubbing that with my fingers a little bit because I've never used that sentiment before, and I just want to take off any film that might be on it so that I get a nice crisp stamping here. So let's go ahead and press that out with this STAMPendable stamping press tool here. And then if you need to, you can stamp that a couple of times. So now that we have that stamped, I'll go ahead and attach that to the inside of my card. And you could have attached that first. I always just like to be a little bit safe, just in case it doesn't stamp well. I could always recreate that panel, but everything worked out fine. So I'm going to center that and glue that down. And then now for the other panel, there's a few different ways to do this. Today, I'm going to just do a really quick shortcut way. I'll just show you how easily you can do this. I'm going to find the center of this panel, and I'll go ahead and cut this right down the middle. And that center is at 2.5. Now, again, I have other videos where there are different ways of doing this, and you can check those out. But for today, I'm going to just do this quick and easy and place that 1/2 on the inside there and 1 on the front. And I'll just make sure those are centered and lined up. Just be careful when you go to glue this panel on. You don't want to glue that entire rectangle, that entire half. So what you want to do is put some glue right along the image here, so right along the edge of the cake, and then we'll put some glue along the 3 sides of this little rectangle, and then a little bit in the middle there. You just want to make sure you don't have any glue right over that cake area, because otherwise your card won't open and close properly. So I'll go ahead and make sure that is lined up on the top and the bottom here and right along that score line or that fold line. I'm just pressing that out with some scrap paper. And then I'll go ahead and place the other half on the front of the card. Now here I can place glue all the way around. It won't interfere with anything. So again, I'm making sure that I'm centered at the top and the bottom and on the left side there, and I'm right along that fold line or that score line. Again, pressing it out with some scrap paper. And now I can go ahead and add the cake. You can see that little flip-flop mechanism there. And I'll go ahead and add this to the front of the card. Now, I did decide here that I wanted to thicken up that cake a little bit. So I did change my mind there. I took that cake off the front and I decided to die cut 4 more of the cake. And what I'll do is stack these up, and that'll give us a nice thick embellishment for the front of the card. It'll make it stand up a little bit more. You could certainly use some foam mounting tape as well, but I thought it would be a little bit more sturdy if I use these layers of cardstock. So let's go ahead and glue these together really quickly. And you do want to take a little bit of time just to make sure they're lined up really well. Now, once I have all of those stacked up and glued together, we can go ahead and attach that right to the front of the card, and we're just going to line it up with that birthday cake that's already there and make sure we press that out. So again, just take some time here to make sure it's nice and straight and lined up well. So let's go ahead and add a little bit of sparkle here. In this set here, this is from Buttons Galore and More. You get these cute little star shape. They're kind of like little sequins. They're kind of a goldy yellow color. There's also little gems in there as well, but I'm going to grab these little star shapes. It's not quite a star. It's like a 4-pointed shape. And I'm going to sprinkle those all around the background here. So I'll go ahead and glue those down. I'll show you that up close here in a second. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at the finished card. And you can see that we have this cute flip-flop design here. And then we have those pretty sequin gems in the background. And I love that spattering. So take a look at some of the colors you have that you can combine together. I almost think that spattering looks like confetti in the background. So it's really pretty. And here you can see that we just covered that opening, but I have done other videos where I leave that opening as is. So there are a couple different ways you can do this. This is kind of the quick and simple way. And that creates a little bit of a Z fold there. So I really hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe. And don't forget to visit me at pinkwhisperdesigns.com. As always, thank you so much for joining me today. I really do appreciate it, and I hope you all have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.